So thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks to Barb, Azadeh, Sabrina for having me, into Hotels.com for hosting us in this excellent venue. I'd usually speak to much more data nerd type audiences. I've done that a few times. When you go to meetups, you realize that about half of the attendees actually run their own meetups, and what they're there for is to recruit people to speak at their other meetups, and that's what Barb did to me. So when he told me that this audience would be a little bit different than my usual bone dry data nerd audience, I kind of jumped at the chance. But what really got me interested was we left the event, we had an intense discussion. He claimed not to be doing anything remotely like data science. Said none of you were doing anything remotely like data science, but listening to him talk about what crap attendees do, I wasn't really that convinced. So the title of that talk necessitates the following disclaimer that this talk is not an attack on organized or even disorganized religion. There are things that science cannot explain, like the people who come along to listen to me, but they're actually watching, the outcome of football games, that's really hard to model and predict. Hopefully the reason for using this religion science metaphor will become clear. If it doesn't, then I've failed. If I offend you, I apologize in advance. And I'm happy to apologize again at the end. So riffing on this religious theme, whatever you want to convince people about, it's good to follow the tropes. So first you establish your authority to speak. Then you build some trust with the audience, tell them some stories, hook them in a little bit. Then you use the trust to challenge them in some kind of shocking way, cue controversy. Then you build up the capital here and then you spend it and shock people. Then there's some meaningful silence. And then a resolution. Also like the structure of like a hymn that you might hear in church as well. So who am I? My authority to speak obviously doesn't come from wearing any special clothes or the fact that Barb gave it to me. I don't know any secret chords, 90s reference, but so you know where I'm coming from, here's a very brief summary of career things and data things that I've done. So I'm a nerd, was a musician, bit of a politics geek, worked for the official statistics agency in New Zealand, in case you didn't work that out from the way I speak. I then decided to become an academic researcher in political science, switched to data consulting, because that made sense, and now I lead a data science team at Cox Automotive Data Solutions. I'm not going to talk at all about automotive, except about why I'm jealous of where you guys get to work. For a long time, the data part of my life was just kind of accidental, like I was good at numbers. It's okay to admit that you enjoy using Excel to solve problems. When I became an academic researcher, I started learning statistics, or what I thought it was, and now I'm relearning it, and everything I learned was bunk. When I switched to data consulting, I learned that actually all these academic analyst teams of one don't really, you guys will know all this stuff, but this is stuff I had to learn. And then the thing that I try and convince people when I talk about data to data nerd audiences, not every business is composed only of consumer-facing websites. Right? There are businesses in the world, some of them large and important, that were originated before the dot-com boom. Okay, and that always colors how I talk about stuff. So you can take the PhD out of academia, but you can't take the academia out of PhD. So we're going to define some terms so you know what the hell I'm talking about. Well, data is probably a good thing to define. I ran a little survey amongst my 40-odd data team colleagues last year in this large, clunky, old-school enterprise in the automotive industry. I said, what do you mean when you say data? Okay, Cox Automotive Data Solutions, we should probably understand what we mean when we say the data is this, the data is that. There's a huge range of answers. I found I could arrange them on this spectrum from like people who thought that data was like a real physical thing. So that's the attitude of the database administrator. So for the DBA, data is something that I have and you can't have it. Because like you'll bring down my system or you might use it the wrong way. Application developers are hardly any better from the perspective of a data person. It's like, oh, data is just one thing that happens in my application. There's this interactions and forms, APIs, something happens. That also wasn't very encouraging. Data engineering starts to get interesting. Anything waiting for interpretation. Business intelligence, my colleagues in the team that handle the reporting, a noisy signal about the world. This is like this is turning me on, this is good. And then what my team, I've brainwashed them into saying pretentious things like inaccurate artifact of a measurement process that hopes to reveal a blah, 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 blah. So these people, right, who all work in the same data team, when they think data, one thinks it's like physical bits and bytes on a hard drive. And someone's like, the people, the data scientists, people who are supposed to understand the most, it's ephemeral, no one knows what it is, we're really lucky to learn anything. So I've heard already a lot tonight, no offense, begin controversy, when you say we want to be more data-driven, which definition of data are you committing to? Remember, this is only demonstrating the variance amongst a bunch of data nerds. We didn't ask the business, we didn't ask any of our customers, used car dealers, what do you, right? So just be a little bit careful when you go out there saying we want to be more data-driven. But for the purposes of tonight, let's say data measures behavior, humans, systems, markets, and its outcomes, right? For me, that's what I care about. Whether it's bits or bytes, whether it exists or not, it's a useful way to try and measure some stuff that's happened. What's religion? We could get into a long debate, but I went to a dictionary instead. If you look across these things, I'll let you read them, I don't need to say it. There's a higher power in control here. There's a differentiation. It's like you book differently on hotels than booking.com. And it's best done with feeling, right? You should be devoted to this thing. So that tells you like what the characteristics of religion are, but why do people follow religions? There's heaps of potential reasons, but from like a sociological perspective, what religion provides that belief systems before it and maybe after it don't provide is an explanation of why things happen the way they do. Why do bad things happen to good people? So note that coherent here doesn't mean that I agree with it or you agree with it, just that it's logically consistent. And if you assume that there's like a controlling superhuman, it's easy to make the rest of the things true. Again, if I've offended you. If you view religion this way, like Elon Musk's simulation theory, like riffing on the Matrix, is this, right? Well, if we were in a simulation, that's what the simulators would want us to think, isn't it? It's basically, or Marxism, or anything that starts with everything you've written below is correct. Therefore, you can't attack that or learn anything. Okay, data, religion, we're doing okay. Okay, but we might have a problem here. If we use a bit of data and a bit of religion to get by in the world, if data does this, right, and religion does that, we're still missing something. And what I click on next might inform some of the questions that I asked. We are missing how. So we saw some things happen. Someone told us that the reason was this, be it previous conversion rate optimizers or whatever Bible textbook thing that you read, or in my world, whatever statistics textbook says, doesn't actually tell you how the thing happens, which, what if our record of what happened and our explanation of why things happen imply two different answers to how things happen? Here's an example that you might be familiar with. People are bad, and when people are bad, they get punished by floods. But we've got some data that said we were being good, and when some floods happened, right? Those two things imply very different, they don't really tell you anything about why. It's like people are bad, people are good. But how floods happen, those are contradictory. How are we going to separate them out? Sorry. So we've defined data, we've defined religion. The good thing is, if we have that problem, there's a really well-worn escape route, which I call data religion. We can fuse the two approaches, bit of data, bit of religion, and avoid some of these pitfalls. So if we really truly believe in a religion's explanation for why things happen, we can just change the way we collect and use data to completely avoid the contradiction. So I'm going to define data religion as the use of data to generate knowledge that's consistent with the religion that informed how you were going to collect it. So it's circular, right? If you want a workflow for how you would achieve this in your organization, religion says this is why things happen in the world, or this is why these kind of interventions on websites convert in this way or not. The adherence to the religion, search for the data that confirms the religion's hypothesis. I've heard a lot of people saying, prove hypothesis tonight. Positive findings are disseminated widely, and heretics are banned. And faith grows stronger. Does this remind anyone of any organization they've worked in where they tried to do data-driven decision-making and then they realized what they were doing was making dashboards that proved what senior stakeholders already thought was true, even if it was not remotely? So hopefully you get a hint of where I'm going. I'm not just going to attack your stakeholders, I'm going to attack you as well in a minute. But we've all seen this happen. Most of us have done some of this, right? We took a shower afterwards, but we've done it. So you might be lucky and sit up in some ivory tower like I used to and do this thing called science. As a side note, does anyone know who founded most of the oldest universities and why? Religions, right? Probably to do a bit of data religion. So if you take like the harshest definitions of science, like ultimate Popperianism, if that interests you guys, the use of data to dismantle theories inconsistent with data. You've noticed the same circularity we had about using data to confirm what the religion said that the data should show also exists in science. That's quite important. So, how you do that is quite difficult. You have a thing called statistics, right, that tells you how likely were we to see this data given this theory. Then we made up a bunch of techniques that Johnny thoroughly dismantled earlier, so I don't need to repeat the hatchet job. But this is a really hard job. If you really wanted to do this, engage in this circular activity, another workflow. Existing theory, so not God or so, existing theory says this is why things happen in the world. Scientists search for data that disconfirms existing hypotheses. It's depressing because the whole job is to tell everyone, including yourself, that you're wrong. Negative findings are disseminated widely. Nobody's ever silenced in science. And then some scientists sitting in a different ivory tower develop a new theory. So that is obviously an idealized view of how science actually works. There's a replication crisis. None of this happens. The incentives to publish negative findings are basically nil. So only positive findings where you beat some arbitrary statistical significance barrier. In political science, when I left it, it was 0.05. In physics, it's 0.00005. It doesn't mean anything. The funny thing is, there are lots of different fields of science, right? Mine was political science. You could have economics, sociology, physics. They all have different practices for using data. Within those fields are camps who firmly believe in their own explanations for stuff. So if you zoom in on science, you find a bunch of different data religions, little cottage industries just all talking to each other and not talking to those other guys. So this is the ideal view of what science is and should be. You kind of have to believe it if you want to be a scientist, otherwise it's too depressing. And it's the fact that it's not true is probably one reason that I left science. So now I've defined data science. Data science is no one knows. There's a whole other talk. You can come and hear me talk at some other point. For the purposes of today, it's safe to say that that's where the excommunicated from data religions hang out. So excommunicated from academia because of all the sophistication. There's a complete disconnection from reality, like ivory tower is true. You might be excommunicated from statistics because that's all just slightly better ways to do terrible things rather than with complicated methods when simple things usually work quite all right. Maybe you're excommunicated from finance, like a colleague of mine who was promised data-driven decision-making but got spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets. This is where I take you guys. Or you might be from any other specialized data analysis community of any flavor, and you get tired of doing the same old things the same way that you've always done them. The show of hands comes later. So, what is it that you people do? For those of you working with data in this room, which Bav assured me was absolutely everybody, what do you do with it? I have lots of preconceptions on the next slide, but I want to check them. So I'm going to pick random, my notes say pick random audiences, snowball sample based on who's, okay. So you, sir, what do you do with data? Black shorts, white shirt. Oh. Yeah. Sunglasses.
I just have a look at it and use it to justify I just use it to make sure that I'm a friendly face in the office and that everyone likes
Cool.
me and that people's hypotheses are sort of as correct as they need to be so that I keep my job.
Okay. Survival is why you use data. Anyone else similar to that? Like, show of hands, who's ever used data to survive in their job? The rest of you are dishonest pigs. Okay. Who thinks that they've used data to do something completely different than that? What's the most different thing apart from, has anyone used data to put themselves out of a job? That would be the most opposite thing. Who's done something radically? Blue shirt, multiple pairs of glasses. I hope they fit one over the other.
No, I used data to prove that there was no viable market for a product that we were developing.
Awesome.
We'd never
You should be in science, man. Did that destroy your company, or was it already going down?
No, it's only one product in the company.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Anyone else want to say what they do with data, Bav?
No, I'll let other people.
I'll go on. I help people to find things that are shit on the website and then tell the people who can fix the shit what's shit.
Ooh, I like that. So you're a firefighter or a shit fighter?
I'm a shit shifter.
Okay. Move it to a different place on the website. So you find what users didn't like about it, and you test the crap out of a way to shift their dissatisfaction to a different...
I find things that are really rubbish on the website, and I give that information to the people.
And how do you find it? How do you find those?
Usually, if it's, for example, things like error messages, I make sure that we log all of our error messages and then show it to the people who can fix those error messages and make them stop happening.
So I can make feature requests directly to you, right? I don't like the way... This one time I tried to book a hotel on hotels.com. Okay, so here's my stereotype. Conversion rate, optimization, analytics, and product. No wonder you have the acronym. So my impression is that mostly people here work for companies running high-volume consumer-facing websites trying to optimize those sites to maximize conversion of clicks, activity into revenue. Is that fair? Is that like a nasty thing to say? Most ideas for improvement come from examining data, using a particular system of analysis, shit finding, shit raking, shit moving, and some mantra like, let's make some changes, let's do some tests, let's be really statistically rigorous, but don't kill the customer experience. However you test that you haven't fucked that up while you're trying to do other stuff. And then there's a lot of very enthusiastic use of A/B testing. Would it be fair to say that you're really good at doing all this stuff, but that innovating what you do is a lot tougher? Impossible, yes. I knew there was one of you. I knew there was a heretic. So, thank you. Who said impossible? So you must have had a crisis of faith in A/B testing in your life.
In all my life, throughout my life.
Good. Tell us more about that.
Well, it's number one. Everything we're doing is just to make the business money, and then when we try to come up with new ideas, they're like, nah, that won't make us money. Go away. Like they don't want to learn a new method.
Okay.
The old method might make them money.
Maybe you're not really good at selling a new method. Or maybe they don't give you time to prove it, but like, does anyone have an existential crisis? Like, when will we stop doing A/B test? When will we get the site that we don't have to A/B test anymore? Because it's good? Or is it just a war against war? You guys flinging shit at booking.com and they're just flinging it back. Airbnb's driving down the middle, just destroying all of you. Here's an even deeper crisis you might have had. How do we know we're even testing the right changes? Anyone ever wondered that? We've got such fucking great statistics on the changes. Are they the right changes, or were we trying to shoot fish not in a barrel, but shoot fish in an ocean? It's like, boom, we hit one, the fish is dead. We really know it because we tested the crap out of it. But like there was a whale there that we could have, no, whales are. Okay, so I think some of you won't be shocked as I thought about this. So if you're looking to get out of a religion, you should be wary of religious statements. This is where I should duck behind the podium. So I've heard lots of people say online, we never do anything without running an experiment. Which is cool. Like, who decides what experiments get run? Is someone else running an experiment on that? If experiments are the only way we can learn, right? That's what Alina told me. It's all, learning is only from experiments. No, I'm being nasty. Okay. We never do anything without running experiments. So that's a religious statement, right? If you believe anything I said up till now about what characterizes a religion, it elevates one technique to God status, reification, if you want to expand your vocabulary. It's really tough to question God. Someone said impossible. It's dangerous to promote alternatives to a God or gods. Probably not at hotels.com, given the rigor that you apply. In other places, the rest of you that are less rigorous, you probably, adherence to the rituals of A/B testing probably get elevated to a level where doing the rituals is the thing that gets valued, not really questioning, can you even A/B test this thing? And it makes some people, like me, holders of secret knowledge, and you don't want to do that. The worst thing is that it lets you all off the hook, right? What's the hook? Well, I'm here to give you... No, I'm not. So my original idea for this talk was to just rant on about why you should think about becoming data scientists. I've delivered the ranting part. Instead of just blatantly advocating why people should do my job, I decided to try and convince people of some of the dangers of thinking about data and how to use it in a narrow way. There are advantages to that because you can get super efficient, as hotels.com identified. That's amazing. Like, I don't think I'll ever achieve anything as slick as that pipeline of experiments. And I'm fine with that. And so following a data religion is great. The weirdest perverted thing is it's almost necessary, I think, to be a good data scientist to be excommunicated from a data religion. Find me in the break to talk about that. So just in case you're ready to think about provoking your excommunication, here's how you might go about it. So I started writing endpoint because I didn't know how long it was going to go. And this, as I'm going through this talk, I'm clearly shooting from the hip more and more, and I'm still surviving. So let's go. So stereotyping again. Is this a thing that people have ever done? Stakeholder chemistry. Of the people who clicked on this, and then closed the browser and came back but stayed with the same session cookie thing, how many of those people, while standing on their left foot in Australia, booking a 5-star hotel with a user review rating under blah, blah, blah that didn't mention rats, converted? Because there's this thing here, listening to the talk about automating the analysis, it's like there's this problem in any experiment. You start cutting up the groups into subgroups. You're going to find whatever you are looking for, or more than enough stuff. There's heaps of fish, turns out, even in the sea. So if you want to get excommunicated, when people ask you to do this, just say no. Fuck off. If I find something, it's a statistical artifact, and Shaun told you so. Told me so, again, this could also be a list of things that hotels.com presumably don't do anymore. Automate the dross of analyzing the funnel. So now stakeholders is like, do it yourself. Here's a dashboard, leave me alone. Maybe even forget about websites, buttons, workflows, forms, being on-brand, off-brand, changing it from blue to red to blue again. Because most things that you test like that are probably going to they're going to get results every now and again just because the world is noisy and experiments are great at picking up noise. You can do things about statistical power, but experiments have been oversold to you. Here's a short recipe on what to do. Use the data that you have, so what happened when, going back to this religion, and theories of behavior. Ooh, why people do things. Do you guys know why people do things? Or do you just change something, prod them like a rat in a cage, and if they jump, well, that's significant, adds 12 million to the bottom line, lock it in. I mean, you're laughing in that awkward way that tells me that I'm at least 1% right, which is good. And then, to bring it all home, that's not enough. You actually need to learn how to build models that connect the two, right? We've got data on some stuff that's happened. We have some understanding of why humans do things. Why do people click buttons? Why do people book hotels? Why do they do this or that? Turns out academia has been studying all this stuff and just published it. So, if you don't use it, just experimenting the crap out of everything is a really long way to get the knowledge that's already out there. and then test the implications of those models. So build a model of what a hotels.com user is, abstract away from the levers that you can pull, like what actually drives people to do the stuff that we're trying to get them to do, and actually start there. A/B tests are not models. Well, the implicit model is this crazy null hypothesis thing Johnny told us about. There's no model of human behavior in an A/B test. It's like, well, we kicked someone, we kicked a lot of people on our website, some of them rolled when we kicked them, lock it in. There's no model of like why people do stuff. There's an implicit model that informed why you're testing the stuff that you did, but there's no model there. So if you actually want to escape, you've got some secret weapons from being in this room. Most of you people work at places where me and most data scientists working in old-fashioned enterprises are incredibly jealous of the richness of your data, and not the data that comes out of the exhaust pipe of the experiments that you're running, 500 at a time. We can talk about that another day. There's all this historical data of what people have done. And with some theories about why people do stuff, you can use observational techniques. Boo. No one's learned anything from observational techniques except most knowledge that we have about why people do stuff. Okay. Experiments in social science are like the cherry on top, icing on the cake that tests the final, I guess, stage of the evolution of some bigger theory. They're not like where you start. Use those, people study human behavior. Hire some of those people. Data scientists with social science backgrounds. No selling Bev, but everything's a job interview in a way. The other thing that I'm jealous of is like the clarity of your objectives. That I was with senior salespeople whose customers are very large used car dealers. They, yeah, I have my own crises of faith, right? But you guys know what you're trying to achieve, right? Beat those other guys and like do stuff that makes more money for hotels.com, pretty unambiguously, which is why A/B testing is seductive, and it's why I asked the question, if you do 500 A/B tests that all say that the bottom line will increase by $1 million in a year, do you get 500 million gain? Do you get like 1 million? I'll tell you why you only get 1 million. And the other advantage you have is you actually give a shit about listening to people. So you've got this deep respect for qualitative work. It's where you get your ideas for A/B testing, but maybe get some ideas for these models as well. What you might choose to brush up on, hypotheses. I've heard that hypothesis word a lot tonight. Didn't like any of them because they weren't informed by a model of human behavior. It was like, people might click the red one because it's on brand. It's like people do stuff because it's colored the same as some other stuff in their field of vision, right? Okay, maybe it made you more money, but that effect is going to die out at some point, right? There are ways to use data that don't involve experiments. Experiments provide gold standard proof of stuff that often doesn't matter, right? This is the effect size versus significance thing. You can run 500 fantastic experiments that move the needle statistically significantly different from zero, but so close to zero that you should just shut the whole thing down. So hypotheses that just come to people in a vacuum without a model. What I always worry about with you guys is, what if two people are running an experiment that's statistically significant and like opposite directions? Like someone's changing it to red and someone else at the same time is changing to blue. I'm sure that's never happened. So why am I so down on experiments? Just before I finish, the very thing that makes them powerful, right, is that you hold everything else equal. And then you take a crap all over that and go and do an infinite subgroup analysis, not holding things equal. But if you do an experiment right, the true power of it is we shoved a bunch of people down a funnel. They didn't know that we were messing with them, right? We balanced on all the covariates. And so that estimate of that treatment effect is unbiased, right? As in accurate, if it's different from zero. What was I saying there? On time. Okay, we've got to finish. Okay. It sounded like it was going to be really profound, but I can't scroll my notes. The thing that makes them that really powerful, everything else equal, also means that what you get out of experiments out the back is not that useful, except there's confirmation of a wider model that you have. So there's really done. I'll finish the talk down here. you've got all this data, and if you had models, you could actually predict the likely effect size, and more importantly, the durability of the changes you make. How often do these changes last? That's why I asked the question about annualizing. Not only maybe did the things not add up to 500 million gain, maybe the effect lasts for about 7 days, and then now you've got to think of another experiment to follow the rituals. There's a different way. Use the data that you've got and observational techniques. You can back out a lot. And so, my plea is embrace a multi-causal, noisy world. Everything that causes something has many effects, and every effect that we observe has many causes. Experiments are designed precisely to ignore this. So if this is the true state of the world, that lots of things cause people to do stuff, and when they do stuff, lots of effects propagate from their action, the power and, I guess, seductiveness and danger of experiments is like ignoring all this reality. What happened when we poked some people and they did some stuff? So that's a depressing note to end on. If you don't find me and murder me after this, you can find me online and troll me mercilessly. You can Twitter troll me. You can hack my website. You can tell my employer that I'm really bad at this and listen to a soon-to-be-launched podcast where we turn this lens on data science itself, because data science is way more criminal at all of this stuff than I've been yelling at you guys about. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for taking that beating. I'm sorry.